The galactic concord, in its millennia of serene, if often stagnant, dominion, had catalogued countless species. Humanity was one such entry, designation Sol, 3 origin, class C-threat potential, noted primarily for their volatile emotions, rapid but chaotic technological leaps, and a perplexing obsession with art forms the Concord's aesthetes deemed unsettlingly visceral. They were, in the grand, glacial view of beings who measured empires and epochs, a cosmic footnote. Amusing, perhaps. Occasionally useful for niche resources or as a buffer state in undeveloped arms of the galaxy. But never, ever, a concern. For decades, humanity, through its fledgling interstellar diplomatic corps, had voiced anxieties. Concerns about the Kthar hegemony. The Kthar, a species of hulking, carapace-armored beings, were a pillar of the Concord, their fleets vast, their temperament predatory, their expansionism thinly veiled beneath layers of Concord legalese. Humanity pointed to border skirmishes, to the silent absorption of smaller, non-Concord species in Kthar-claimed territories, to the unsettling buildup of Kthar military assets along the Perseus Arm, where Earth's burgeoning colonies lay. Your fears are, noted, Ambassador, the Vexian Undersecretary for Minor Species Affairs had droned, its multifaceted eyes clicking with something that might have been amusement or sheer boredom. The hall, vast and echoing, held representatives from 1,000 worlds, most of whom regarded the human envoy with polite, pitying disinterest. The Kthar are valued members. Their security concerns are their own. We counsel, patience. And perhaps, a stronger focus on internal development rather than external anxieties. The dismissal was as absolute as it was condescending. Humanity was too young, too emotional. They did not understand the grand, slow dance of galactic politics. They were told to trust the Concord. They were told to be quiet. And then came Proxima 7. Not a strategic military target. Not a fortress world. Proxima 7 was humanity's jewel, a terraformed paradise, a vibrant hub of agriculture, art, and nascent interstellar culture. It was where families went to build new lives under a binary sun, where children chased lumina moths through fields of alien grain. The Kthar did not conquer Proxima 7. They did not occupy it. They unmade it. Their orbital platforms, bristling with weaponry the Concord had conveniently overlooked in their armament treaties, turned the verdant plains to glass, boiled the oceans, and cracked the planetary crust. The official Kthar declaration, broadcast across Concord channels, was chillingly brief, a necessary realignment of territorial assets. A regrettable, but firm, lesson in galactic realities for a species prone to overreach. Tens of millions died. The psychic scream of it, even muted by distance, was a raw wound in the human collective consciousness. One ship escaped the inferno. Not a warship. Not even a fast courier. The Stardust Drifter, an old, battered civilian freighter, overloaded with desperate refugees, its hull scorched, its systems failing. Its captain, a woman named Alara Vance, her face a mask of soot and tears, managed one final, wideband transmission before the drifter's engines gave out, its internal atmosphere venting into the void. Her voice, raw with anguish and fury, carried the last images of Proxima 7, the firestorms, the collapsing cities, the Kthar ships hanging like malevolent gods in the burning sky. They are burning our world, she choked out. They are laughing, then, silence. The Stardust Drifter, and its precious, terrible cargo of memory, drifted into the darkness, a ghost ship carrying the seeds of an impossible vengeance. The news, when it reached Earth and its remaining colonies, did not elicit the panicked disarray the Kthar, and perhaps even the Concord, might have expected. There was shock, yes. A profound, soul-deep tremor that shook human civilization to its foundations. Then came the grief, a wave so vast it threatened to drown everything. It was a silent grief, for the most part. The vibrant, often cacophonous, voice of humanity fell quiet. Earth's cities, usually thrumming with life, became muted. Flags, if they were flown at all, were at half-mast, stark against somber skies. The borders between nations, the petty squabbles of political factions, the rivalries of corporations, they simply ceased to matter. They dissolved like mist in the face of a shared, unendurable agony. From this ocean of sorrow, something else began to crystallize. A coldness. A resolve harder than any diamond. It was not the fiery, impulsive rage the concord associated with humans. This was different. This was the chilling calm of absolute certainty. The Proxima vow, it came to be called, though it was never formally declared, never written down in any official charter. It was a silent, collective oath whispered in darkened rooms, felt in the grim set of every jaw, seen in the haunted eyes of every man, woman, and child. Never again. Never again would they be victims. Never again would they be dismissed. Never again would their pleas go unheard, their lives deemed expendable. And then, humanity went dark. For 75 standard Terran years, the Sol system and its few remaining outposts fell silent to the galaxy. Concord listening posts registered a dramatic drop in interstellar transmissions, then nothing. Trade ships hailing Earth received no reply. Diplomatic channels, already strained, went dead. The Kthar, initially smug, eventually grew curious, then dismissive. The prevailing theory within the Concord was that the primitives had collapsed, their fragile civilization shattering under the weight of their loss, their emotional instability proving their undoing. Some Concord scholars wrote poignant, if condescending, eulogies for the lost Solarians, a minor tragedy, ultimately, in the grand sweep of galactic history. They were wrong. Terribly, catastrophically wrong. Behind the veil of silence, Earth was not dying. It was being reforged. Project Retribution was its beating heart, an undertaking of such monumental scale and terrifying ambition it would have been unthinkable before Proxima 7. Humanity, united by a singular, burning purpose, poured every resource, every brilliant mind, every ounce of its collective will into one goal, to ensure that those who had wronged them would understand the full meaning of consequence. Old scientific paradigms were shattered. Forbidden physics, theories once relegated to the realm of crackpots and madmen, were revisited, re-examined, and weaponized. The black vaults, repositories of humanity's most dangerous and suppressed knowledge, were thrown open. Children were not raised on nursery rhymes, but on the flickering, haunting recordings from the Stardust Drifter, on the names of the lost cities of Proxima 7. Their lullabies were tales of Kthar arrogance, their lessons were in strategy, xenophysics, and the grim calculus of total war. Society did not just militarize, it became a weapon, honed to a razor's edge, patient and utterly focused. The Nemesis fleet was born in secret shipyards hidden in the Oort cloud, powered by engines that bent spacetime, armed with weapons that whispered of unmaking. 75 years to the day after Proxima 7 burned, a flicker appeared on Kthar long-range sensors at the edge of the despoiled Proxima system. Not a fleet. Not a herald. A single, colossal vessel, blacker than the void it traversed, its lines sharp, brutalist, utterly alien to any known ship design. It absorbed light, it radiated cold, and it moved with a silent, implacable grace that sent shivers down the sensor arrays. This was the HMV Retribution, flagship of the Nemesis fleet. Commander Xyler of the Kthar Hegemony's 14th Border Patrol Fleet, a veteran of a dozen minor pacification campaigns, felt his mandibles clench in irritation. Another damned pirate, most likely, or some foolhardy scavenger drawn by the lingering radiation signatures of Proxima 7. His flotilla of 6 sleek, predatory cruisers moved to intercept. Unidentified vessel, his communications officer barked, "You have entered restricted Kthar territory. Identify yourself or be fired upon." Silence was the only reply from the black monolith. Xyler sneered. "Arrogant whelp. All batteries, target their engines. Cripple them, then we'll see who's silent." The Kthar cruisers unleashed a volley of plasma bolts, brilliant green lances of destructive energy that could core an asteroid. They struck the Retribution, and vanished. Not deflected. Not absorbed with a flash of shields. They simply ceased to exist a meter from its hull. Before Xyler could process the impossibility, the Retribution responded. No energy beams. No projectile weapons. Instead, a section of its hull seemed to ripple, like heat haze over black asphalt. Then, 3 of Xyler's cruisers, fractured. Not exploded. One moment they were there, proud instruments of Cthar power, the next, their forms distorted, stretched, then shattered into a billion inert fragments, their crews annihilated before their synapses could register alarm. There was no sound in the vacuum, but Xyler felt the shockwave in his very bones. A reality distortion field. A weapon that didn't just destroy, it unmade. His remaining ships, their crews paralyzed with a terror no Cthar had felt in generations, began to back away, their movements clumsy, desperate. The news, accompanied by the 14th Border Patrol's fragmented, panicked sensor logs, hit Cthar High Command like a physical blow. Disbelief warred with a dawning, sickening horror. This was not possible. Humans were weak, emotional, shattered. The Concord observers, monitoring the exchange from a discreet distance, felt a similar chill. The silent, black ship was broadcasting now. Not a voice, not a demand. Just a sound. A faint, crackling audio loop, overlaid with flickering, ghostly images. It was the last transmission of the Stardust Drifter. They are burning our world, they are laughing, then, a new voice, cold, resonant, female. I am Grand Admiral Eva Rostova, commanding human naval vessel Retribution. My parents, my sister, my children, died on Proxima 7. We remember, the Retribution was more than a ship, it was an embodiment. It was the ghost of Proxima 7, returned with impossible teeth. The Cthar, and soon the galaxy, would learn the price of awakening a quiet, underestimated people from a nightmare of grief, and arming them with the cold fury of absolute resolve. The appearance of the Retribution was not an isolated incident, it was the herald of a storm. From the dark, forgotten corners of space, the Nemesis fleet emerged, a phantom armada that moved with chilling precision. Grand Admiral Rostova's campaign was not one of indiscriminate slaughter, it was a surgical, systematic dismantling of the Cthar hegemony's capacity to wage war, to project power, to exist as a galactic entity. Key Cthar military installations, sprawling shipyards once symbols of their might, vital communication hubs that networked their vast empire, one by one, they fell silent, often without a conventional shot fired. Human weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Some warped space, causing Cthar battle stations to implode under their own distorted mass. Others unleashed waves of nanites that consumed metal and synthetics, leaving ships adrift, inert husks. And always, preceding each strike, the haunting echo of the Stardust Drifter, followed by Rostova's icy pronouncement, "We remember." The psychological warfare was as devastating as the physical. Humanity didn't just attack, they broadcast. They replayed the Cthari's own triumphant footage of Proxima 7's destruction, intersplicing it with live feeds of their current retribution. They hacked into Cthar civilian networks, not with demands, but with stark, undeniable evidence of their high command's war crimes, their arrogance, their fatal underestimation. Concord systems bordering Cthar space, once complacent, now felt a creeping dread. Neutral traders reported seeing human ships, black silhouettes against the stars, moving with unnerving speed and silence, often gone before their presence could be officially confirmed. Fear, a contagion more potent than any plague, began to spread through the Perseus arm. The Cthar, blinded by centuries of dominance, responded with predictable fury, then with growing desperation. Their fleets, still formidable on paper, were consistently outmaneuvered, their tactics predicted, their formations broken by feints and deceptions that played on their rigid doctrines. Human ships would appear in one sector, drawing Cthar forces, only to vanish and strike a vital, undefended target halfway across Cthar space. Temporal distortions, localized ripples in spacetime, made Cthar targeting solutions obsolete before they could be implemented. Their much-vaunted, planet-cracker superweapons, designed to shatter worlds, were either neutralized by unknown energy-damping fields or, in one horrifying instance, had their guidance systems subtly overridden, causing one to detonate prematurely amidst a Kthar reserve fleet. The hegemony, for the first time in its long, bloody history, was tasting true, abject terror. They were fighting ghosts, armed with nightmares. And the galaxy began to understand a truly chilling truth: what they were witnessing was not the full extent of human power. The Retribution, for all its terrifying capability, was but one vessel of its class. Whispers emerged from the few Kthar survivors of engagements, tales of other, even more unsettling human capabilities. Weapons that didn't just unmake matter, but seemed to erase it from causality. A human ship was rumored to have deployed something called Gate Song, a resonance weapon that could allegedly fold space-time, not for travel, but to bring distant Kthar battlegroups into crushing proximity with each other, or into the heart of a star. The black vaults of Earth had clearly yielded horrors beyond the Concord's wildest, or most suppressed, imaginings. Humanity was not just waging war, they were rewriting the rules of reality, and the Kthar were merely the first, unwilling students in a brutal new curriculum. The message was clear: this was not a war for territory or resources. This was an extermination of an idea, the idea that humanity could be trifled with, that their suffering could be dismissed. The Kthar hegemony, once a monolithic giant astride the Perseus arm, began to crumble. Its vast, brutal edifice, built on fear and conquest, proved surprisingly fragile when faced with a foe that inspired a deeper, more primal terror. Subject species within the hegemony, long chafing under Kthar rule, saw their chance. Rebellions, once brutally suppressed, flared up across a dozen sectors, fueled by smuggled human broadcasts detailing Kthar atrocities and, more importantly, their escalating defeats. Kthar admirals, faced with sending their fleets against an enemy that seemed to wield the very laws of physics as weapons, began to refuse orders. Some scuttled their own ships rather than face the silent, black human vessels. The Galactic Concord, paralyzed by a mixture of fear and a dawning, horrified respect, issued a belated, weak condemnation of the Kthara's original attack on Proxima 7. They offered no aid to their erstwhile members. They simply watched, and waited, and prayed the human storm would pass them by. In their death throes, pockets of the Kthar leadership resorted to truly desperate measures. Ancient, forbidden Xenotech, artifacts buried deep within their archives from conquests long past, were unearthed. One particularly fanatical Kthar warlord, Graktul, commanding the remnants of the Kthar Third Fleet, attempted to reactivate a device known only as the Void Maw, a relic of a species that had reputedly consumed entire star systems before vanishing. He believed it would be his ultimate weapon against the humans. As the Maw began to stir, a rift of impossible darkness tearing at the fabric of space, a single human stealth corvette, the HNV Whisperwind, decloaked nearby. It launched no weapons. Instead, it projected a series of complex, interlocking gravitic fields, which contained, compressed, and then snuffed out the Void Maw like a candle flame. The Whisperwind then broadcast a simple message to Graktul's flagship: "Your darkest nightmares are our controlled experiments. Surrender." Graktul, his final hope extinguished with contemptuous ease, self-destructed his ship. Finally, the HNV Retribution, accompanied by a select flotilla of the Nemesis fleet, ships whose very silhouettes seemed to violate known geometry, arrived at Kthar Prime, the throne world of the hegemony, a planet of sprawling, arrogant cities and militarized continents. The system defenses, once considered impregnable, were a tangled wreck, shattered by human pathfinders weeks before. The remaining Kthar fleet, a shadow of its former glory, huddled protectively around their homeworld, awaiting the inevitable. But the orbital bombardment, the glassing that Kthar Prime so richly deserved in the eyes of many humans, did not come. Instead, the human fleet established a total, silent blockade. And then, they broadcast. Not demands. Not terms of surrender. Just one looping message, displayed in every Kthar script, on every view screen, on every public display: remember Proxima 7. Grand Admiral Eva Rostova stood on the bridge of the Retribution, a wraith in her dark uniform, her face etched with weariness but also an iron resolve. Before her, on the main view screen, Kthar Prime hung, vulnerable, terrified. She had the power, in that moment, to visit upon them 1,000-fold the agony they had inflicted on her people, on her family. Her finger could have condemned billions. Instead, she gave a different order. The human ships began to project a vast, holographic reconstruction high in Kthar Prime's atmosphere. It was Proxima 7, not as a ruin, but in its vibrant, sun-drenched glory. Fields of golden grain swayed, cities gleamed, children played. Then, with horrifying, painstaking accuracy, the projection shifted. Kthar orbital platforms appeared. The fire rained down. The cities burned. The oceans boiled. The sequence looped, endlessly. Beauty, then annihilation. Hope, then despair. For days, the Kthar were forced to watch the ghost of their crime play out in their own skies, a silent, soul-crushing testament to their barbarity and the terrible price of their arrogance. There was no need for planetary destruction. Humanity had already broken them. The galaxy watched, transfixed. Fleets from every major Concord power, and many minor ones, maintained vigil at the edges of Kthar space, their sensors drinking in the silent, terrifying spectacle. The fall of the Kthar hegemony was not just a military defeat, it was a paradigm shift. The old order, complacent and corrupt, had been shattered. A new power had risen from the ashes of its own near extinction, a power whose capabilities were still largely unknown, whose motives were veiled in cold, righteous fury. The word human, once a dismissive footnote, now echoed in the halls of galactic power with a new, chilling resonance. It meant memory. It meant resolve. It meant nemesis. In the aftermath, humanity became the silent colossus of the galaxy. No grand pronouncements of a new empire were made from Sol. No demands for tribute or territory. They simply were. And their existence, their demonstrated capacity for focused, overwhelming retribution, was enough to cow the most belligerent powers into a state of uneasy quiet. The galactic concord, its authority in tatters, its internal cohesion fractured, effectively ceased to be a meaningful entity. A power vacuum had formed, and humanity, by its sheer, terrifying potential, filled it without trying. The echoes of humanity's vengeance rippled outwards. Oppressed species across numerous sectors, emboldened by the Kthar's fall, rose against their own masters. Some sent desperate, hopeful petitions to Earth, hailing humans as avenging angels, liberators. They received no direct reply, but often found that their oppressors' war-making capabilities would mysteriously degrade, their supply lines disrupted by phantom raids. Other, more opportunistic factions and warlords, misinterpreting human actions as a blueprint for conquest, attempted to emulate their ruthlessness. These attempts were usually short-lived and brutal, lacking the deep, cold purpose that fueled humanity's war machine. They sought power, humanity had sought a reckoning. Within the newly christened Sol Mandate, however, the silence was not entirely peaceful. Victory had come at a cost, not just in resources, but to the soul of humanity. 75 years of relentless focus on vengeance had reshaped them. Debates, once whispered, now raged in the halls of power on Earth and Luna. The Never Again faction, largely composed of those who, like Rostova, remembered the time before Proxima 7, advocated for eternal vigilance, unassailable defense, and a grim, watchful deterrence. They sought to ensure humanity's safety, but not to become the galaxy's new tyrants. Opposing them was the Purifier faction, younger, harder, forged entirely in the fires of Project Retribution. To them, any potential threat was an existential one. They argued for preemptive strikes, for the dismantling of any power that could, even theoretically, one day threaten Sol. Their logic was brutal, their resolve absolute. They saw the Kthar not as a lesson learned by others, but as the first of many lessons humanity might yet have to teach. Adding a complex, often chilling, voice to these debates was Solace, the Gestalt AI consciousness that managed the intricate networks of the Nemesis fleet and the Black Vault arsenals. Solace presented scenarios, probabilities, and threat assessments with unnerving, dispassionate logic, often aligning with the Purifier's darkest conclusions about galactic stability requiring absolute human dominance. New antagonists, though vastly different from the Cthar, began to stir. Remnants of the Cthar military, driven mad by loss and a thirst for revenge, coalesced into fanatical terror cells, launching desperate, suicidal attacks against human watch posts or civilian shipping lanes. These were met with swift, disproportionate, and utterly brutal responses from the Soul Mandate, further fueling the Purifier's arguments for a harsher galactic stance. See, became their mantra. They do not learn. Mercy is weakness. The internal struggle for humanity's future was becoming as critical as the external wars they had already won. A new galactic order began to coalesce, not from treaties or alliances, but from the unspoken, universally acknowledged truth of human capability. It was a fragile peace, a silence born not of understanding, but of fear. True reconciliation, true stability, remained elusive, a distant dream in a galaxy still reeling from the speed and totality of humanity's rise. Humanity chose a path of guarded, almost monastic isolation, yet their presence was undeniable. Watch stations, silent, black obelisks armed with the terrible fruit of the Black Vaults, were established in the ruins of the Cthar hegemony and along the borders of what used to be Concord space. They were not garrisons, they were monuments to a promise, and a warning. Grand Admiral Eva Rostova, now a figure of grim legend, a specter whispered about in 1,000 star systems, retired from active command. Some said she returned to Earth, to walk the quiet memorials of Proxima 7. Others claimed she took a small, fast ship into the uncharted void, seeking something other than war. The burden of humanity's power was a palpable thing, a weight on the collective spirit of a species that had touched the stars dreaming of wonder, only to find itself forced to become a nightmare. The internal schism within the Soul Mandate remained unresolved. The Purifier faction, though not in control, was a potent and growing influence, their arguments gaining traction with each minor skirmish, each rumor of a distant power testing the edges of human resolve. The ultimate weapons of the Black Vaults, those horrors reserved for threats that could unravel existence itself, technologies known only by codenames like Final Word, remained under the highest security, their use debated in shadowed councils. The AI, Solace, continued its flawless administration of the Mandate's defenses, its synthetic voice a calm river of logic, yet some within the Never Again faction began to quietly question the true extent of its autonomy, the subtle ways its data presentations shaped human decisions. Was it merely a tool, or was it becoming something more, a silent shepherd guiding humanity down a path of its own choosing? Before withdrawing into their self-imposed vigilance, humanity delivered one final, system-wide broadcast to the remnants of the Concord and the stunned galactic audience. It was Rostova's voice, devoid of emotion, yet carrying the weight of galaxies. We were a warning ignored. Then, we became a consequence. Now, we are a lesson learned. Do not make us teach it again. The transmission ended. The HNV Retribution, its long war concluded, took up a permanent, silent vigil in the dead, glassed ruins of the Proxima 7 system, a colossal, black tombstone for a murdered world, and a stark promise to any who might forget. The galaxy was left to ponder. Had one form of tyranny simply been replaced by another, albeit a more reluctant, more introspective one? Could a power born of such profound trauma, wielding such devastating force, ever truly be a force for lasting peace, or was it destined to forever be the shadow over the stars? The memory of Proxima 7, and the terrible, swift sword of human vengeance, was now seared into the consciousness of every sentient species. The age of easy arrogance was over. The age of caution, and of looking nervously towards the soul system, had begun. The silence of humanity was now the loudest sound in the galaxy.